Not only was big business buying up the resources of the country at the turn of the 20th century, they were purchasing the tools to control the public mind. This idea collides with a story most Americans are still being told, the story of a free press. The story that really every idea with merit has an equal shot at swaying the masses. That ideas compete in an open, real-time contest, and that the best one wins. No one ever told Americans that the engineers of the public mind had arrived on the scene in the late 1800s. The public mind, that entity the French sociologist Gabriel Tarde first identified, was brought into being through technology. And it would be through science and applied technology that the public mind would be tamed. A recent feature in a New York magazine put it plainly: the feed is fake and most likely the product of a stealth marketing campaign. We assume the timeline reflects the collective pulse of millions of human beings making independent choices. It just doesn't. It reflects paid trend simulation. 65,000 dummy accounts, 50,000 pieces of micro content deployed every day, $1 per 1,000 views. As one agency founder admitted on the record, everything on the internet is fake. The implication is staggering. The scientific engineering of public opinion is 130 years old. Older, actually. Lincoln Steffens, the celebrated muckraker, wrote home to his father from Europe that he was thinking of opening a clipping bureau when he returned to the United States. He had watched the European operations serve politicians, kings, authors, and actors who wanted to, quote, follow themselves in the press. The market was already there. And listen to what the boast Graham Wallas, he was a Fabian socialist, very noteworthy, well-connected man in the United Kingdom, committed to paper in 1908. He said this: popular election may work fairly well as long as those questions are not raised which cause the holders of wealth and industrial power to make full use of their opportunities. There is so much skill to be bought, and the art of using skill for the production of emotion and opinion has so advanced that the whole condition of political contests would be changed forever. The technology evolved. 40,000 miles of telegraph wire became cloud-based API. But the fundamental architecture of manipulation has not changed. Engineering, at its core, consists of three things: inputs, outputs, and feedback loops. Let's start with the inputs. In the late 1800s, the Associated Press, alongside its European cartel partners Reuters, Havas, and Wolff, secured a global chokehold on information by controlling the telegraph lines themselves. Ken Cooper, who ran the AP, didn't just liken this organization to a great Buddha sitting calmly at the news crossroads of the worlds, distilling events to their essence. He called the AP the greatest and most powerful international monopoly of the 20th century, and he meant it as a description of power, the power to decide what the people of each nation would be allowed to know about the people of every other nation, and in what shade of meaning that news would be presented. Charles Edward Russell, writing in 1914, did the math. An identical dispatch would be printed about 15 million times and read by 30 million people. Here is an engine, he wrote, that causes 30 million minds to have the same thought at the same time. This is the input chokehold. It's the first pillar. And, well, every monopoly needs a cover story, and the AP's was brilliant. They claimed a crusade to deliver pure, unbiased news, free of nationalist coloring, free of profit motive, free of editorial slant. It was framed as a public service. Ken Cooper said the quiet part out loud, though people never noticed or read the book. It's axiomatic, he said, that the purer the stream of the news, the more eagerly do government interests and self-seekers want to use it. The purer the stream, the easier it can be tainted a little without the public taking notice. Read that again, right? It's axiomatic that the purer the stream, the easier it can be tainted a little without the public taking notice. The cover story of purity is what made the contamination invisible. The brand of objectivity hid the massive dangers of daily and even hourly selection bias, not to mention other more nefarious uses. Once the wire monopoly was in place, the corporate world simply continued the systematic process of regimenting the public mind, as they called it. Powerful interests bought massive blocks of advertising space and then filled that space with news written by their own agents. The National Industrial Council, funded by the National Association of Manufacturers, operated a massive data capture and publicity machine masked as a research board. Standard Oil ran stealth news bureaus. The American public was fed corporate press releases disguised as independent journalism. This is the iceberg model. What you see above the waterline looks like grassroots public opinion and objective journalism. What sits beneath the waterline is the well-funded and carefully constructed narrative infrastructure pushing the visible content into existence. But content feeds must have monitoring, or input is mostly guesswork. So true engineering requires measurement. To that end, organizers for the Chicago World's Fair, a corporate organization I might add, borrowed techniques already flourishing in Europe, as we heard of earlier, the Clipping Bureau, a costly, time-consuming way to capture global sentiment about an event. The fair organizers had a problem. Most of the world considered Chicago a cultural backwater. Europeans were not looking forward to crossing the ocean and traveling halfway across the continent to take part. So selling the world on Chicago was going to be tough. But they put out millions of words of gratis news, that's free copy, that was distributed worldwide. And the Clipping Bureau was set up to monitor the results. Hundreds of workers scanned newspapers from across the globe. Articles were clipped, organized, and analyzed for, quote, misrepresentations. And then they were swiftly and deftly addressed. Identify the holdouts, adjust attitudes, repeat. The feedback leads to analysis, and analysis to intervention. The Chicago Fair, by the way, was a huge success. A modern, disciplined science was now emerging, which could map out global opinion and shape it. Can you imagine the thrill? Can you just imagine the thrill? It's breathtakingly simple, extremely costly, and the year is only 1893. By 1896, this approach moved into the executive branch. President William McKinley revolutionized the presidency by turning it into a news-generating machine. He installed new telegraph lines running directly into the executive mansion. A clipping bureau was now an essential feature of the office. The American public opinion could now be roughly monitored and corrections determined. This is the first scientific feedback loop for opinion control operated from inside the White House. From this time forward, the executive branch serves as much as a structural propaganda instrument as a governing one. The technique continued to undergo perfecting in the private sector. In 1905, the Boston Publicity Bureau took on a client whose reputation was a disaster, the Southern Railway. They mapped the political leanings of every local editor in Nebraska. Then they flooded the state with free articles containing what they internally called, quote, massed material favorable to the railroads. Press releases disguised as journalism. They didn't guess at the results. They measured with the barometer. Before the campaign, 212 negative articles, 2 positive. 11 weeks later, 4 negative articles, 202 positive. They had mathematically flipped public sentiment in less than 3 months, and they had the data to prove it. Once again, an organic phenomenon becomes an engineering output, measurable, reproducible, and ultimately for sale. Now, let's fast forward from clipping newspaper articles to clipping videos. Stealth marketing agencies cut podcasts, songs, and public relations material into thousands of short-form videos and flood social media with the fragments. Why pay for an ad slot when you can stimulate massive unscripted grassroots enthusiasm for a fraction of the cost? Here's the operating math. 65,000 active dummy accounts running as a distribution network, 50,000 pieces of micro content, and $1 per 1,000-day views. This is industrial scale manufactured consensus running 24 hours a day. So here's exactly how it works. Step 1, a client would pay an agency for trend simulation. That's their term. Step 2, freelance clippers flood the platforms with the micro content through the dummy accounts. Step 3, the algorithm reads the artificial spike as organic engagement and pushes the content out even further to real users who perceive the message as authentic. Step 4, journalists and critics report the manufactured trend as objective reality. Everybody's talking about this and it's gone viral. So remind me again, why are we spending all this time on social media? But there's one more layer. In a world drowning in information, controlling the comment section is a key factor for managing any narrative. Agencies sell that too. They call it narrative campaigns. Comment threads seeded with specific theories and talking points. $1,500 per thread, $5,000 a month for sustained narrative control. By controlling the comments section, they dictate your perception of what was supposed to be an organic conversation. Which brings me to another simple axiom. If something exists online, a synthetic, non-authentic version of it can be purchased to confound and confuse you. Since the 1900s, the information ecosystem has been a controlled environment which can be engineered. If you control the input, monitor the output, and engineer the space in between, you become an architect of reality. Let me say that again. You become an architect of reality. So here's the final piece, and it's the hardest one to accept. If the public mind can be engineered, it can be purchased. From the clipping bureaus of the 1900s all the way to the organic viral trends of the 2020s and more, it is unquestionably the holders of wealth who have controlled that public mind. Now, don't believe me. If you need more data, get my book, Masters of Illusion. I have all the research there, all the citations. It'll be really, really super obvious for you. You can't get everything out of the video. Okay, so to conclude, the engineering started 130 years ago and hasn't stopped, guys. The first step in escaping the system is not just to see a system, but to recognize who is building it. I'm Michelle. This is Smart Sheep. Subscribe, like, and stick around.